What is going on, everybody? Welcome to my top 10 edge rushers in the 2019 NFL Draft. A quick reminder, no film in this video, but I do have film breakdowns of some of these players. I'll actually put a card here for one I did on Josh Allen, actually on a different channel. I've got one on Rashan and some other players as well up on my Patreon if you're interested, where you can also get access to my complete draft board with full profiles like this on every player in the entire draft. Also a reminder, please like the video, it's the easiest way to support the channel, and if you're shopping for tickets, hit up promo code FranchiseGuy on SeatGeek and you will save $20 on your first purchase. So let's get into it here, starting at the top. Nick Bosa, really no surprise here. He's been the consensus since the season started. And Robert Mays on the last Ringer NFL podcast actually really summarized my thoughts on this, and that's, a lot of people don't want to be lazy and use the Joey Bosa comparisons for him, but he really is just like his brother. I think he might be a little more powerful, not quite as athletic, but his style is pretty much the same. He has a plethora of pass rush moves. He is explosive. He's got the length. He'll play the run. I mean, really just the ideal pass rusher. I do think you bump him up a little bit if you're a 4-3 team, but it really doesn't matter. I mean, we saw the Broncos taking Bradley Chubb despite being a so-called 3-4 team, even though that really doesn't even matter anymore, but that's a different tangent. Anyway, Nick Bosa, a top 3 player in this class. I fully expect him to go 1 or 2 in this class, although I think Kyler Murray's going number 1. Next up, we've got Josh Allen here, and for those that have been following me over the last couple months, might surprise some people considering I've been, so much higher on Rashan and I've shown some questions about Josh Allen. I've said that I think there's a chance Josh Allen falls a little further than expected, into like that 8 to 12 range. A lot of people will say there's a big 3 in this class with the 2D, with Quinnen Williams, Bosa, and Josh Allen, and I completely disagree. A lot of people using Khalil Mack comparisons for Josh Allen, which just blows my mind considering Khalil Mack. Well, what do you fear most about Mack? It's that he's going to hit you with that long arm and just run you over, combined with all of his other, combination of moves as just a terrifyingly balanced pass rusher. That's not Josh Allen. Josh Allen actually played a lot as an off-ball linebacker. He's a little taller, lengthier, not as strong at all. In fact, I would argue he has almost no power elements to his game as a pass rusher. Now, I did recently think of a new comparison for him, and that's Chandler Jones, because I'd had Anthony Barr, and I'm not going to completely back off of that. I think there are some similarities in that there's a chance he might be better as an off-ball linebacker. But Chandler Jones, you think of just the quickness, a really good hand fighter with Josh Allen, and he is so good at getting deep downfield as far as a pass rush is concerned. What I want to see from Josh Allen, and I went pretty in depth into this in my film breakdown of him that I'll put the card in right now. He needs to, when he gets to the point of kind of running past the quarterback, which is not good because in the NFL, quarterbacks will just step up in the pocket and good tackles will flush them out. A lot of times in college, he was able to just run around tackles, but there was a lot of times as well where he was pushed out of the play. And he would do it occasionally, but I want to see him develop more ability to spin back inside, cut off that step-up lane. Also, his bend, I think, is good, but it leaves a little bit to be desired. So I do think Chandler Jones, I think there's a better chance than not that he'll be a good pass rusher at the next level. But I also have kind of said comparisons to like Anthony Barr or even Hassan Reddick, who's a little smaller of an athlete, and that there's a chance that they actually aren't going to be a very successful pass rusher and might end up having to switch off ball. I'm not going to say that happens with Josh Allen, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities. So I just want to make it clear. I think Josh Allen is very special. I think he can be a number 1 pass rusher at the next level, hence the potential grade and ranking him as a top 10 player and the second impact player in this class at the position. But I do not think of him in that, blue chip prospect category that a lot of people do. So I guess I'm low on Josh Allen. That's fine with me. I think he's a top 10-ish player, not a top 4. So next we got Rashan, and I did a film breakdown of him as well. And he gets way too much hate. And yes, believe it, people, he is an edge rusher in a 4-3. I don't think a 3-4 team is going to end up with him because I just think that 4-3 teams are going to value him so much more because of what he can do as a 4-3 defensive end. Now, a lot of people don't like him because of the stat production. Well, I don't know how often I have to say that stats are just the worst way to evaluate a player. Like, look at this list right here of all of the elite pass rushers in the NFL or young players that look like they're going to be elite that didn't produce in their last year. Like, it's just dumb. Like, he was top 10 in pressures in college football his sophomore season. By the way, he's just a true junior, and he's an absolute freak athlete. And then his junior year, I thought he looked pretty good. He only had 4 sacks. He missed about 4 or 5 games and was playing with a nagging injury after that. So the production to me is a non-factor. I see a guy that, it's the Bill Belichick thing. Take a guy based on what he can do, not what he can't do. No, he's never going to be an elite, bendy edge rusher, but guys like Brandon Graham, Michael Bennett, Calais Campbell, Jadeveon Clowney is a really good comparison for Gary, by the way. These guys aren't bendy, finessey edge rushers, but they're all $20 million players that are very, very good NFL players. And if you can get that player at the back end of the top 10, you do it. So yeah, Rashan Gary is one of the most easy to hate players in this class because he's this, number one prospect that never met his potential, but he still has that potential. And the people that say he's completely raw and just stink, I think my film breakdown showed that he actually has a really good long arm power rush that is a little reminiscent of Khalil Mack. I mean, this guy's 280 pounds and ran a 4.6 40. He, at worst, is going to be an elite run defender as a 4-3 end who you can move around and rush the passer a little bit, whether that's from the inside on third down like a Brandon Graham type, or he continues to develop on the edge and can be like a Calais Campbell who can rush the passer on the edge. So I'm a big Rashan Gary truther. A lot of people saying, second round for this guy. I think it's just ridiculous. And I've talked a lot about his scheme fit to Detroit at number 8, who still needs another edge guy. I think that is still a good landing spot for Rashan Gary. Last thing I forgot to say too is he's a good guy. I think you look at a lot of these guys like Montez Sweat or Jachai Polite who have major character questions. You don't get that with Rashan Gary. He's just a great dude that I would love to have in my locker room, and he's also just a freak athlete. So give me Rashan Gary in the top 10. Number 4, Brian Burns. This is completely projecting, and it really depends kind of what you're looking for. I think there's other guys in this class too, like Zach Allen, Clelin Ferrell. If you're a team like maybe Atlanta or Carolina in the middle of the first round, you might want to take a guy that's going to help you win now a little more, but I love Brian Burns to Washington at 15. Great scheme fit. It's a need. He can kind of be part of a rotation and develop because his upside is absolutely ridiculous. He's one of the best athletes that I think has ever come out of college football. He's a true junior. I had worries about his weight because he was listed at 6'5", 235, which is a twig. There's receivers in the NFL that are thicker than that, but he comes in at 249 and moves like the wind. So, I mean, the upside here is crazy. His tape is fine. He shows some really good explosiveness and bend. He needs to develop some pass rushing moves. There's no doubt about that. The NFL comparisons, Randy Gregory, it's kind of hard to come up with a comparison for a guy like this because he's such a freak. I think, Randy Gregory, if he came out as a junior, I don't even know what he was when he came out, but if he didn't have the red flags, he might have turned into a hell of a player, and he actually showed some nice flashes. So I don't think it's a terrible comparison. So he kind of comes in here at number 4 because of the upside, but the next really 3 guys are much more polished players, so it really comes down to a matter of preference. And the other thing you'll notice here is from 5 to 9, I mean, these guys are literally, if you look at that overall grade, they're butting right up against each other. So it really comes down to preference at this point. But number 5, Zach Allen, I've been big on this guy going back to January. His tape is just remarkable. I will stand by him being the most refined, smart edge rusher in this class, who just has so many ways he can beat you. And he's not a very good athlete, and some of this stuff is not going to translate. But when you see a guy that can beat you with power, that can spin inside, hit you with a swim move, run up, play as a 3-tech, as an edge rusher, can even drop into coverage. He bats balls just like J.J. Watt does. He really does everything. You know exactly what you're getting. I think he's one of the safest players in this entire class. I mean, you hate to say it, but like New England here, if they land him at 32, if they don't trade that pick for Josh Rosen, I mean, I could see him being a perennial, like an 8-time Pro Bowl player. The dude is just a great worker too. So I just feel very comfortable taking Zach Allen. I like the upside a bit as well. I mean, remember J.J. Watt coming out was not this like, Greek god that he is now. I mean, he was a better athlete, I think, than Zach Allen is coming out for sure, and I don't think Zach Allen will be exactly J.J. Watt, but he could certainly be what J.J. Watt is now after all the injuries. He's not quite as big of a freak. Like, if you could land the current version of J.J. Watt at the end of the first round, I think you'd be very, very happy with that. So I like Zach Allen quite a bit. I encourage you to check out his tape. Particularly the Temple game is some of the best edge rush tape I have ever seen for a college prospect, and I don't say that lightly. Number 6, we've got Clelin Ferrell here, butting right up in terms of how I rate him with Zach Allen. Kind of comes down to what you're looking for, because I think Zach Allen's a guy that could actually rush from the inside a little more versatility. Ferrell's going to stick on the edge there. My comparison for him, Derek Barnett, kind of a lower upside but high impact guy that's just produced in college and has a lot of skill sets. His first step is what, if he is going to become a number 1 edge rusher, which it's possible. I don't know. He'd be a low-end number 1 because of the physical ability. But I think of Everson Griffin with that first step, his ability to spin inside. He's got a bunch of moves. He could become Everson Griffin. I think that's his ceiling. But a lot has to go right in for that to be the case. But I do think he's going to be a good impact out the gate, someone you can plug right in and just feel pretty good about it. Number 7, we got Chase Winovich, who wowed people at the Combine. And, for a guy who's really before the Combine, his only criticism was that he's not very athletic because he has that kind of, red shirt senior, the long hair, the Clay Matthews story almost, which is my comparison for him. As far as his tape is concerned, he doesn't have any defining strengths. He's a little bendy. He can bull rush. He can kind of, rip inside or spin around you. It's a little inconsistent at times. He really can beat you in any way. I don't know if he's going to be a dominant pass rusher. And then he is actually a little weaker than you would expect. Not overly strong. And I think, I really put almost no weight in the bench press. I just think that's just a terrible way to judge how strong he is. Just look at the tape, see how he handles blocks. I thought going in, he was a little, I don't want to call him soft because he's a total badass, but he can get pushed around a little bit. He's a little bit weaker than you might like. That's why I project him as a 3-4 outside linebacker. With those movement skills, he was used primarily as an edge rusher. A hand in the dirt edge rusher. Obviously, a 3-4 outside linebacker is an edge rusher, but he was very rarely dropped into coverage. I think it was 3 or 4 times his entire senior year. So he has a lot of upside to be a guy that can kind of move around and be a versatile piece, just like Clay Matthews. And, you hate to use the comparison because of the long hair and the play style, but he's a super similar player, so I think it's fair. I think if he could land in L.A. and play under Clay Matthews, it would be a great fit as well. So the number 8, Jachai Polite. And you're probably wondering where Montez Sweat is at this point. I originally had him at 8 in my grades, and I was just thinking about, if I'm on the clock, am I taking Montez Sweat or Jachai Polite? Other than, Seattle, where I think Montez Sweat's a great scheme fit and just kind of a good environment for a guy that has character issues. And we'll get to Sweat in just a second here, but when it came down to it, Jachai Polite's tape's just too good. And Montez Sweat's the freak athlete. He's the guy that you're going to want in Madden, and he might be an ooh and ah guy when he comes off the board. A lot of people like him. I hate Montez Sweat's tape. He has almost no skill to his game, and again, we'll get to him. Jachai Polite beats you in so many ways. He was built just like Melvin Ingram, at least he was before his combine, which we'll talk about. But he can beat you with a spin move, a swim to the outside. He can just, beat you with speed to the outside. He just was, I think, one of the more polished pass rushers in this class, and he's a more traditional edge guy than Zach Allen. He was at a time my number 2 edge rusher. But then the combine happens, and he's overweight, and he's slow. And, I had him estimated as a 4.6, like a low 4.6 40 kind of guy. He comes out and runs like a 4.82 at a higher weight than he's listed. All of his interviews, by all accounts, are just terrible. So you're getting all these character red flags, and I don't know him. I don't have any evidence about the type of guy he is. I can only go off of what I hear. So you have to, how many times do you hear that he's a bad dude before you start to believe it? And it's been said many times. So I'm still pretty comfortable taking the risk. Like, if you put him in a good environment like New England or even Seattle, and let him just do his thing and flourish, like, he could be an absolute steal. His tape reminds me just of Melvin Ingram. But man, when it came down to it, I just like his tape too much. And he could very easily be a bust and not put in the work at the NFL. And that's definitely reflected here as a first to second round grade on him. But my gut tells me he's going to be just fine, because his tape is just remarkable. You don't have that refined of a game without having some kind of work ethic. That's kind of my opinion. But he has really just butchered this pre-draft process. Number 9, we got Montez Sweat. As you can see, the first guy in all of these videos that we're not using a video of him in his jersey, because this is basically who you're getting. You're getting a combine freak, 4.4 40. He comes in at 6'6", 260. I really don't like his tape at all. Yeah, he's got a really nice explosive first step reflected by his 40 time. He's got the length. He can kind of long arm you and, whatever. But he's got no bend. Doesn't use the power that he does have. He really doesn't have any pass rush moves or counter moves at all. He's a guy that's played in 3 schools, was kicked out of Michigan State, played at the Last Chance U Conference. He was playing with a super talented defense. I think Jeffrey Simmons opened up a lot for Montez Sweat. I really, if I was the general manager of a team, I don't think I could pull the trigger. Like, this is how he grades out. I see the potential. I see the upside. I do think with, like, Seattle, who has a tremendous track record of taking players like this, there's a chance he works out, but I just don't feel comfortable taking this player at all. It's mostly gut feeling. It's just too many red flags for me. Like, I get the upside and I get the excitement around him, and some people are going to hate this and say I'm crazy. I couldn't do it. And then number 10, this is a guy that you need to put on your radar, and also keep in mind the drop-off after Sweat, and even that's me saying I don't like Sweat. Like, I would take Sweat in the second round for sure. But after Sweat, I'm not taking an edge rusher until the middle of the third round. There's a huge cluster. If you want to get my draft board, you can see what I'm talking about. There's like 9 players, I think, that I have third to fourth round grades on. But there's guys like Jalen Ferguson getting mocked up there, the Bonnigue out of TCU in the second round. Like, I'm just not going to do that, because I like Jamal Davis a lot as a sleeper if you can get him before those guys or after those guys go. But in reality, Jamal Davis is a similar prospect to Yannick Ngakoue. And let's not disguise it here. Yannick Ngakoue is a flawed player. He fell to the third round. He's never been a good run defender. He's had some inconsistencies. But one thing that Yannick Ngakoue can do is get after the quarterback and run around tackles. And that is what Jamal Davis can do. I think he has the best first step in this class. He came out and destroyed it at the combine. This guy produced like crazy in college, as you would expect at a low level. And I don't really care about production, but it does say a little bit, So he's a guy that I don't even know if he's going to be a full-time starter. I see him as a guy kind of like a Vic Beasley, who's going to come in, who I might even have to change my comparison. That might be better. But anyway, come in on third down. If, say, you have a guy like Zach Allen, and you push him inside as a 3-tech, and then you rotate in Jamal Davis fresh off the bench, he is going to have 10 sack seasons in the NFL. I'm calling that right now. It could very well not happen and he not be very good. But I just see a lot of talent here, a very specific skill set, because he is a smaller guy. He's not going to play the run very well. But I see a guy that you can put in there and just almost like a third down running back as a pass rusher and just get in there. So that's the top 10 edge rushers. Again, guys, check out Patreon for more film breakdowns, as well as access to my full draft board. You can see who comes in after this. A lot of people are going to ask, oh, what do you think about this guy? What do you think about that guy? I'm trying not to answer those because I want you guys to get that draft board. You can see how everyone stacks up against each other. And again, please hit that like button. So cheers as always, and we'll see you next time.